Sandman Volume 2, The Doll's House. Written by Neil Gaiman, art by various people: Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, Chris Bachalo, Michael Zulli, Steve Parkhouse. In Volume 2, The Doll's House, Morpheus, he is back in control of his dream realm, but now he has to put order to things. There are some escaped dreams and nightmares out there in the real world, causing some havoc. So Morpheus has to track them down and bring them back into the dreaming. There is also a woman named Rose Walker, and she is something called a dream vortex, so Morpheus also has to deal with her as well, as dream vortexes can be potentially very dangerous. On top of all that, we have an African folktale dealing with the origin of that Nada woman we met in Hell in Volume 1. We also have one of my favorite issues in Sandman, dealing with this character named Hob Gadling, who is a man that lives forever. We also, in this volume, meet one of my favorite villains in this series, a man known as the Corinthian, who is super horrifying looking. Very cool volume. Let's dive into it. Volume 2, The Doll's House. Issue 9, Tail in the Sand. We see two African men walking in the desert. One is a young man, and the other is his grandfather, an elder in the tribe. The young man just went through some sort of ritual where he gets circumcised, and now the elder must tell the young one a particular tale. And when the elder is done telling the tale, they will return back to their tribe, and the young one will be considered a man. The grandfather tells his grandson first to go find something in the desert. The young man eventually returns with some sort of glass-looking heart. The grandfather then begins telling his grandson the tale. The tale has been passed down for generations in this tribe to the various men when they come of age. The tale is only told to them once, though, and one day, if this young man lives long enough, he too will be expected to pass on the tale. This is an African folklore tale, remember, so a lot of it is not very, how you say, realistic. It has talking animals and mystical stuff in it, so be prepared. The grandfather tells his grandson the tale. The place that they are walking through now is just a desert today, but thousands of years ago it was a city full of fruit, trees, and many animals. And that city was ruled by a queen. She was a 16-year-old girl named Nada. Nada was the woman we saw in Hell in issue 4 in volume 1 of Sandman. Her and Morpheus apparently had a relationship, and he condemned her to hell for the last 10,000 years. Well, now we will learn the story of their relationship and how she wound up in hell. So Nada, she was a 16-year-old girl, and she ruled her city wisely and well, but she had no man. The woman of her tribe would say she should take a husband, and she would turn from them and say, "Where then is the man for me?" And the woman would fall silent. One day, Morpheus, looking like an African man at this point in time, he was walking in the street below, and he walked under Nada's tower. And Morpheus, he said nothing, but when he looked up at Nada, he stole her heart away. Nada, she did not sleep that night, and in the morning, she ordered that that stranger she saw on the street below be brought to her immediately. But her men could not find Morpheus anywhere. So, Nada went to a creature named the King of the Birds and asked him for his help. The King of the Birds summoned all the birds of the air and asked if they had seen the stranger. Eventually, one little bird admitted that he did. The stranger gave him food to eat, and then he just disappeared. The King of the Birds, hearing this, realizes that the stranger, referring to Morpheus, is no man nor god, but something else. The King of Birds tells Nada to just forget him. Nada, she can't though. Eventually, another bird tells Nada that there is a tree that grows on the mountains of the sun, and on that tree grows a berry of flame. If a human were to swallow the berry, it would take them to the side of their true love. So Nada, she asks the little bird to fetch her that berry. The bird returns and gives Nada the fire berry, and she eats the berry, and it puts her in a deep sleep, and she awakes in the dreaming. We see in the dreaming, Cain and Abel are fighting. Even though this is like 10,000 years ago, they're still going at it. Cain, he even kills Abel right then. When Nada asks Abel, who's apparently alive again now, where she is, Abel explains that she is in the dream world, ruled by Kekukul, the Lord of Dreams. So Nada, she walks on and eventually finds Morpheus's throne room. Morpheus asks her who she is and why has she come here. And Nada explains that she is looking for the stranger who she saw from her tower, for she loves him. Now, if you ask me, I think she's being a little bit quick here to say that she loves someone. She's literally only seen Morpheus from a tower for a few moments. But whatever, it's a folktale, it's not supposed to fully make sense. And Nada, she's a 16-year-old girl. 16-year-old girls are quick to fall in love. Morpheus, he removes his dream helmet and reveals that it was him. He is the mysterious stranger that she saw, that she loves. And when Nada looked in Morpheus's eyes, she could tell that he loved her too. Nada is saddened though. She has just confessed her love to one of the Endless. And it is forbidden for a mortal to love one of the Endless. Only disaster can come from it. So Nada, she spits out the fireberry from her mouth and she wakes up from the dreaming. Morpheus, though, he's persistent and he pursues her in the waking world. Nada is hesitant because mortals cannot be with the Endless. But Morpheus says that he would like to marry Nada anyway and make her a queen of his dream realm. Nada, she loves Morpheus, but she is deathly afraid of what it could mean if the two of them got together. So Nada, she turns into a gazelle and she runs away. What? What? She turns into a gazelle? Apparently that's what she did. It's a folktale. It's not supposed to make sense. But Morpheus comes after her as a hunter and slays her. Nada, she turned back into her human form and then she mutilated her vagina with a sharp rock so her virginity would not be intact. So Morpheus would not want her because she is no longer a virgin. That's when you know a girl does not want to get with you, when she mutilates her vagina. Morpheus is like, I don't care about that. I'm not a mortal man. I love you as no mortal could love. What matters your body to me? Morpheus then with his touch healed up her vagina, healed the wound, and then the two of them made love for the rest of the night. In the morning though, when the sun arose, a blazing fireball fell from the sky and it burnt the city, razing it to the ground, leaving just a desert behind, a desert with glass shards, just like the one the grandson found in the future. Nada, she is distraught. Her and Morpheus banging caused her city to be burned to the ground. She says worse will happen if she stays by Morpheus's side. So Nada, she jumps off up from this high cliff where her and Morpheus are, and she kills herself. Nada has died, and her spirit awoke in the forest on the borders of the realm of death. Morpheus, he's upset. She could have chosen to be his queen, instead she chose death. Morpheus, he found her again, and he asks her one last time. He offers his love to her. Will she accept it? Will she be his queen? He tells her that if she refuses him this last time, he will condemn her soul to eternal pain. Nada says that if she were to stay with him, more bad things would happen. Mortals do not marry the Endless. She refuses to answer, and she walks toward death. Morpheus catches up with her again though. Nada, she begs Morpheus to not ask her to be his bride again, for if she refuses him again, he will condemn her to eternal suffering. But Morpheus, he asks her again anyway to be his bride. And that is the end of the story. The grandfather tells his grandson. The grandson is like, what? He's annoyed. That story didn't have an ending. What did Nada say? And the grandfather explains that is the way his uncle told the story to him. The grandson, though, he insists to know what happened. The grandfather explains, well, she said no. What else could she say? The grandfather and grandson walk on. We learn there is a version of the story the women tell each other, and in that version, things happened a little bit differently. But that is the woman's tale, and it is never told to the men. This is implying that there are certain details of the story that would make Morpheus's actions probably seem even worse if the women were telling the story. And that is how Nada wound up in hell for 10,000 years. Issue 10, The Doll's House. We are in Desire's realm. Desire is one of the other members of the Endless. Desire is very vain, and he or she lives in a giant statue of itself, but in the heart of the statue. Desire's gender is fluid. He or she appears as whatever gender the viewer most desires. On the wall of the room, we see various items. Each one corresponds to a different member of Desire's family. Desire can hold a sigil, an item of another family member, and summon that family member to his or her realm. Desire grabs a ring with a little hook on it, which belongs to Desire's sister named Despair. Desire summons Despair, and Despair appears. Despair is fat and ugly. She grabs the ring with the hook and starts scraping her face with it, which is just gross. The two talk. It is revealed that Desire does not like her brother Dream or Morpheus, and Desire was the one behind Nada those many, many years ago. She was responsible for the two of them falling in love. Desire shares with Despair, though, a new plan to destroy Morpheus. The new plan involves a woman named Rose Walker, who is something called a dream vortex. We jump to a plane where we meet this Rose Walker, a young woman with blonde hair mixed in with some other colors, and her mother Miranda Walker. They are on a flight on their way to England. Rose Walker is something called a dream vortex. Dream vortexes are entities capable of connecting dreams with other people, and dreams or nightmares are drawn to them. Dream vortexes are potentially dangerous, but they are rare. They don't come around that often, maybe once a century or so. Rose Walker does not know she is special in this way. She does not know that she is a dream vortex. Rose and her mother, Miranda, have been summoned to England to meet someone. Their tickets have been paid for, and they've been told it's very important and it's all very mysterious to them. They are greeted at the airport by a man named Jack Holdaway, who will be driving them to the mysterious person they are here to meet. In the car ride on the way over, Rose falls asleep. She all of a sudden sees the dreaming world. She sees Lucien in the dreaming, Morpheus's assistant. Lucien, he is doing an inventory of all the entities that reside here in Morpheus's dream realm. Lucien, he talks to Cain and Abel and counts them. He also counts their new gargoyle, Goldie. Lucien, he then walks through other parts of the dreaming and counts more entities. Eventually, Lucien returns to Morpheus and informs him that he has completed the census of the dreaming, and 4 entities are missing. The entities that are missing are Brute and Glob, the Corinthian, and Fiddler's Green. Lucien also tells Morpheus of rumors of a dream vortex. Morpheus tells Lucien it's okay, he's aware of the dream vortex, the first of this era. Morpheus tells Lucien, referring to Rose, the dream vortex is observing us right now. She's right over there in the corner of the throne room. Both of them turn and look directly at Rose in the dream realm. And Lucien comments, "Why, you're right, Lord. Quintessential vortex material. And she's so young." Rose then wakes up, and she's back in the waking world. Rose and Miranda eventually arrive at a large mansion. And there they are greeted by a 90-year-old woman with gray hair. This old woman is Unity Kincaid. Her family was very rich and well off. This is the same Unity Kincaid we met last volume. She was one of the people that fell into the sleeping sickness when Morpheus was held captive for over 70 years. This is the same Unity Kincaid that was raped in her sleep and had a baby, and that baby was given away. Unity, she tells them the story of what happened to her, how she was asleep for so many years, and how she eventually tracked both of them down. And she informs them that Miranda is her daughter, and Rose is her granddaughter. Unity wants to talk to Miranda alone for a bit, show her some of the legal documents that prove she is in fact her mother. While they're talking, Rose, she starts walking through the house a bit, and she has a run-in with the three witches, the same witches we met last volume in the dreaming when Morpheus was talking to them. The three witches mention Rose's brother Jed, who is missing. They also tell her to beware of dreams and houses and warn her of something called the Corinthian. The witches then disappear. Rose then rejoins her mom and Unity Kincaid, and Rose's mom, Miranda, she is crying in happiness. She tells Rose it's all true. Unity is her mother and Rose's grandmother. They are all fairly happy to be now reunited with one another. There's a dollhouse in the room while they're all together though, and we see Morpheus, a little Morpheus, appears to be in it, watching them. Rose asks what's happening. She mentions the witches she saw in the other room and how they knew about Jed, and they told her she should beware of the Corinthian. She asks, what's the Corinthian? We jump somewhere else, back to America. The Corinthian is in a motel, and he has a boy tied up in a bathtub, and he is going to eventually remove the boy's eyes and eat them. The Corinthian is an escaped nightmare from Morpheus's dream realm, and he now prowls the earth as a serial killer. The Corinthian has tiny mouths where his eyes should be, and he really looks quite frightening. Definitely looks like something that would be out of a nightmare. The Corinthian, he often wears sunglasses to cover his teeth eyes. He can speak and even eat through these mouths in his eyes. He does not seem to suffer in any way from his lack of eyes, and claims to be able to see very well with them. Although not 100% stated in the book, Neil Gaiman has confirmed that the Corinthian is a homosexual, and that is why he often abducts boys instead of girls. The Corinthian is fond of taking the eyeballs of his victims and eating them by placing them in his eye sockets. He is probably one of the most memorable villains in the series. Issue 11, Moving In. Rose travels back to America, and she has been tasked by her grandmother, Unity Kincaid, and her mother to find her brother, Jed Walker, who is missing. Rose arrives at a house that she is going to be living in for the time being while she conducts her search. She meets the various occupants of the house. Her landlord is Hal Carter, a drag queen. There is Barbie and Ken, a yuppie couple. There's Zelda and Chantel, a lesbian couple with a spider fixation, and they wear these weird veils. And there's also a man named Gilbert, aka Fiddler's Green, although he's not here right now. Gilbert is secretly an escaped, sentient part of the dreaming. He is part of Morpheus's dream realm. He's not exactly a dream or a nightmare. He is like nature or a beautiful landscape or land. He is whom all travelers, especially sailors, apparently dream of one day finding. But he sometimes likes to take human form and go wandering using the alias of Gilbert. And he's also staying in this house. Alright, let me do a little bit of explaining on what is happening to Jed Walker, Rose's missing brother, as it can be kind of confusing and very high concept. Neil Gaiman, he repurposes all of these old, obscure DC characters in the story here, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on a lot of these characters. So, there are two missing nightmares, Brute and Glob. We've heard them mentioned earlier. Well, these characters were actually sidekick characters in the original 1970s Sandman series, but in a twist, Neil Gaiman makes their role as sidekicks to the original Sandman comic actually part of some sort of ruse. So Brute and Glob, following Morpheus's being held captive for 70 years, they decided to try and become the powers behind the throne of the dream world, and they tried to set up their own version of the Sandman that they could manipulate and control and thereby take over the dreaming. This is where Jed Walker comes into the picture. Jed Walker, he's the brother of Rose Walker. Jed Walker also appeared in the original version of the Jack Kirby Sandman comic book as well. He would often go on adventures with that version of the Sandman. Now, Jed's parents, at some point, they separated, and his father had custody of him. But Jed's dad then died, so Jed went to live with his grandfather, who also eventually died. The state then sent Jed to live with his father's cousin named Clarice and her husband Barnaby. That's where he lives now. Jed went to go live with them in their isolated rural farmhouse. Clarice and Barnaby are extremely abusive to Jed. They only took him in as a foster child in order to receive the $800 a month in welfare for him. Jed is frequently starved and physically abused. The couple, they even lock Jed up in a bare basement with no light, no bathroom facilities, and only a thin blanket on the stone floor for his bed. And we see Jed, he's forced to just piss on the wall in this basement. Jed's life was so miserable, so terrible. His only escape was sleep in his dreams. Brute and Glob, they sought out and found this Jed Walker, and they confined themselves to a small corner of the dreaming, a sort of dream dimension. And this dream dimension is inside the mind of this little boy, this Jed Walker. Brute and Glob, they cut off Jed Walker's dreams from the rest of the dreaming, so it is separate, and Morpheus, or whomever, can't detect what they are doing. Jed, he would often dream about going on heroic adventures with a character called the Sandman. This is where it sort of loosely ties in with the original comic, but subverts it and changes it a bit. These adventures that Jed would go on with the Sandman are essentially supposed to be the adventures Jed went on in the original 1970s Sandman series, except none of those past stories were ever real. They were just revealed to be set in Jed's mind. Alright, now there's another DC character named Hector Hall. Hector Hall in the DC universe was the son of Carter Hall and Shiera Hall, the Golden Age heroes known as Hawkman and Hawkgirl, so he's their kid. Hector at one point in the DC universe was using the superhero name of the Silver Scarab. Hector Hall was married to another DC hero named Lita Hall or Hippolyta Trevor. Lita Hall, or Hippolyta Hall, or Trevor, is actually the only daughter of the Golden Age version of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman's usual love interest, Steve Trevor. So she's their daughter. I know what some of you are thinking, Wonder Woman has a daughter? I don't remember that being a thing. Well, it was back in the day, but in the 1980s, DC had a storyline called Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it retconned tons of their continuity and reset the DC universe so that Lita Hall was no longer Wonder Woman's daughter, and Wonder Woman didn't have a daughter. But anyway, Hector Hall and Lita Hall were together and they were married, and Lita Hall was pregnant with Hector's child. And they were superheroes on a superhero team called Infinity Inc. This all happened in other DC books in the 80s. So anyway, this Hector Hall, he died in that other DC book, and in the DC continuity at the time, he was dead. Well, apparently Neil Gaiman took that killed off Hector Hall character and brought him into his Sandman book. Hector Hall, he would manage to cheat death for a bit. And Hector, his consciousness had been cast into the dreaming, where he was discovered by Brute and Glob. And Brute and Glob had taken to recruiting mortals as surrogate Dream Kings, whom they hoped to use as a means to seize control of the entire dreaming, and they used Hector as this pawn. And Hector, he adopted the costumed identity of the Sandman, previously used by Brute and Glob's former pawn before Hector, a guy named Dr. Garrett Sandford, who had apparently killed himself after losing his sanity in the dream stream. So the previous person they tried to use this way did not really work out so well. Brute and Glob, they lied to this Hector and got him to adopt this new superhero persona as this new Sandman. Brute and Glob, they continue to lie to Hector and string him along, and they keep him busy while they try to further their true goals of taking over the dreaming. Alright, all that explanation is out of the way. We see Jed. Jed, he is stuck in this basement. Horrible life, and he dreams. And in his dream, he is with Hector Hall, the Sandman, and they are going on adventures. We see Rose. Rose is writing a letter to her mom and Unity Kincaid, updating them on her search for Jed. She tells them about finding out about Jed's dad dying and the grandfather dying, but now she doesn't know where Jed was sent after that. While Rose is typing her letter, she is visited by a raven that watches her from a window. This raven is a messenger raven named Matthew that works for Morpheus. Matthew is actually a character named Matthew John Cable that first appeared in another DC book called Swamp Thing. In that book, Matthew, he got into a car accident and eventually was put into a coma, and in the hospital he eventually died. And since Matthew was in the dreaming when he died, because he was in a coma, he became a part of the dreaming, and he was asked by Morpheus if he wished to be a raven, an offer that Matthew accepted. So Matthew the Raven, he is tasked by Morpheus to watch Rose and report back to Morpheus. Matthew, he eventually flies into the dreaming and talks with Morpheus. Morpheus wants Rose watched because she is a dream vortex, and eventually other dreams and nightmares that escaped from his realm will be drawn to her. That's just what dream vortexes do, they attract dreams. And this is how Morpheus will attempt to find Brute and Glob in the Corinthian and Fiddler's Green. So for now, Morpheus wants Matthew to continue his surveillance of Rose. Matthew reports that Rose is looking for her brother Jed, who is missing. Morpheus, he wishes to know more about Rose's brother Jed, so he orders Matthew to get him a picture of the boy, get a picture of this Jed, for Morpheus must see him in order to find him. Rose, she's walking down the street one night in a seedy alley. Some street thugs try to rob her at knife point. She gets saved, though, by a man dressed in a greenish trench coat and hat. He whacks the attackers away with his cane. This man is actually this Fiddler's Green. Fiddler's Green, one of the escaped entities from Morpheus's dream realm. Fiddler's Green introduces himself to Rose as Gilbert. He is the neighbor that lives above her in the house that she is renting a room in. The two of them become kind of friends and they walk back to the house together. We jump over to Jed. He is having another dream with Hector Hall, this Sandman, in his dream world. Jed, he eventually though wakes up when he gets bit by a rat on his face. Jed's life is very shitty indeed. We jump back over to Rose in her rented room in the house that she is staying at. Matthew the Raven, he flew into her room and he grabs a photo of Rose's brother Jed and he flies away with it and returns to Morpheus with it in the dreaming. Morpheus, looking at the picture of this Jed, feels it is strange. The boy is still alive in the realm of the living, but he cannot find him, cannot sense him. Each human is connected to the dreaming. They spend a third of their life in dreams. To break this, Jed's connection to the dreaming, it would take power and knowledge. Morpheus wonders who is responsible for this. Fiddler's Green, the Corinthian, Brute and Glob? Which one of them would have done this? We jump over to the Corinthian. He is on the phone in some motel room, and he is enjoying eating some eyeballs of some recent victims. Back over to Rose. She has tracked down the location of this Clarice and Barnaby's farm, who have supposedly taken in her brother Jed. She has rented a car and she is going to drive to that farm and get her brother back. Fiddler's Green, or Gilbert, as he's known to Rose, offers to accompany Rose on her trip because it could be dangerous. So she accepts his offer of help. Now Morpheus, trying to get to the bottom of this Jed, he goes to the center of the dreaming and Morpheus concentrates, trying to detect Jed. Eventually, Morpheus does detect him. Morpheus, talking to Lucian, says, "Found him? How dare they? How dare they? Brute and Glob, brute strength and base cunning? This has their stink about it, Lucian. How dare they? They severed this child from the true dreaming. They are living in his mind, Lucian. They know the law, my law, and they have wantonly defied it. Did they think they could hide from me? I do not know what game they are playing, but I know this. I am angry, Lucian, and it's my move." Issue 12, Playing House. We are in the dream dimension in Jed Walker's mind. We see Lita Hall, the wife of Hector Hall. She is alive and pregnant, and she has joined her husband Hector in the dreaming, and she has lived here for several years now. Lita, she thinks about how busy Hector is lately and how they never seem to have time to make love anymore. We see Hector Hall with the nightmares Brute and Glob. Some alarms are going off. Hector Hall, because of Brute and Glob's trickery, believes that he is this Sandman superhero, and that they are in this secret base called the Dream Dome, and that Brute and Glob are his sidekicks. Being in this dream dimension has made Hector lose touch with reality, and he has become increasingly more obsessed with his role as the Sandman, and he has now devolved into a flamboyant superhero who fights nonsensical battles against the weak villains of this dimension. Hector, talking to Brute and Glob, says, "It's a 10-alarm nightmare and it's heading this way. Better batten down the hatches, team. This is gonna be a doozy. Brute, Glob, have you guys ever seen anything like this before?" Glob, bullshitting, says, the nightmare monster? It's a terrible creature from the, one of your, hereditary foes. Hector isn't scared, though. He's ready to show that monster what he's made of. Hector's wife, Lita, joins them in their little base there, the Dream Dome, and the two of them go to talk privately. Lita is also losing touch with reality a bit, but she's trying to fight it. She asks her husband, "How long have we been here in this Dream Dome?" And Hector answers, "A couple of years, what?" Lita explains that she was 6 months pregnant when they arrived here, and the baby should have came by now. Hector admits, maybe you got something there. He walks her back to their quarters, and Lita asks him, "You won't be in danger, will ya?" referring to Hector's next mission. And Hector boasts, "Honey, you're talking to the man who rescued the Toothed Fairy from the Jovian Fishmen, who stopped the big bad wolf from puffing down the Chrysler Building. Nobody ever beats the Sandman." Hector returns Lita to their quarters, and then he heads off to save the day. Lita is left to contemplate her existence. She can't help but feel something isn't right. She thinks about Jed, that little boy who comes to visit them all the time. Nobody else ever visits them. She wonders why. In the waking world, Jed is being given a talking to by Clarice and Barnaby, his foster parents. They tell him someone from the welfare department is coming by in a week or so to see how he's doing. So Barnaby is threatening Jed and tells him when the time comes he better behave and make nice, and tell them how well they feed and take care of him, and he better not lie or carry on. Barnaby then shoves Jed back into the basement and locks the door. They lock him down there because Jed ran away a few years ago, so they're not making that mistake again. Inside the dream dimension in Jed's head, Morpheus is trying to fight his way in. Brute and Glob have built all sorts of dream traps and things to slow Morpheus down. But that's all it will do, slow him down. It won't stop him. It's just a matter of time before Morpheus gets in there. Brute and Glob, they're discussing with each other. They are worried what Morpheus will do to them once he gets in here and finds them. For now, though, Brute and Glob, they send this Hector Hall, this Sandman, to go and fight Morpheus, the nightmare monster. They fully expect Morpheus to easily destroy him, but maybe it will buy them some time. Hector, he's still in full-on superhero mode. He's ready to take him down, and he jumps into something called a dream chute, which will spit him out to where Morpheus is in this dream dimension. Now, Brute and Glob, they're debating, so do we sit here and watch our old boss pull this bozo's head off, or do we find some place to hide? Rose and Fiddler's Green were driving on their way to the farm where Jed is at, but their car broke down. So they ended up walking to a nearby hotel to try and get a place to stay for the night. The hotel is hosting something called a cereal convention that weekend. So the place will be pretty booked. The hotel clerk is not supposed to be renting any rooms to outsiders at all that weekend. Just people that are there for the convention. But because he wants to help Rose out, he decides to let her rent a room for the night anyway, because most of the guests are not coming here until tomorrow. Back over to Jed. He is in the basement, and he is crying. His head hurts. He says, "Something is happening! There's something in my head! Ah!" The reason Jed's head hurts is because inside his mind, Hector Hall is trying to battle Morpheus right now. Hector tells Morpheus, "Come on, you dumb nightmare monster!" Morpheus, seeing Hector, comments, "I see my servants have a servant of their own. Little ghost, get out of the way." Morpheus refers to Hector as a little ghost because remember I said Hector is actually dead? Hector, trying to fight back against Morpheus, uses a weapon he calls his ultrasonic whistle, and he blows it. It doesn't do anything to Morpheus, though. Morpheus's patience, now running low, asks Hector, "Where are your masters?" Hector then continues to try and battle Morpheus. He says, "That didn't faze you, huh? Well, let's see how you react to a cartridge of dream sand." Morpheus asks Hector, "Who are you?" And Hector replies, "I am the Sandman, guardian of the dreams of men, protector against wicked nightmares, lord of the dream dome, and friend of children everywhere." Morpheus to this replies, "You are what? You? You are the Sandman? Is that what they told you, little ghost?" Morpheus then laughs. Not just a little laugh, a real belly laugh. Morpheus then comments, "Oh, humanity, how I love you. You never cease to amaze me." Morpheus then comments, "Well, this has been amusing, little ghost, and that was not something I expected, but every playtime must come to an end. This dream is over." With a wave of his hand, this little side dream dimension gets destroyed. And in the basement of the farmhouse, there's a little explosion and some of the walls break down, and Brute and Glob and Hector and Lita are now all outside of this dream dimension, and they are in that basement of this farmhouse. And little Jed is there too. He is watching them from the staircase. Morpheus says hello to Brute and Glob and asks them if this little charade had a purpose. Brute and Glob, they are sniveling now, and Morpheus says, I'm waiting for an explanation. Glob explains, well, you were way out of the picture, Lord, so we thought, hell, you'd obviously be away for a while, perhaps a real long while, so we could maybe make our own Dream King, one we'd be running. So we hid in the kids' dreams and walled it off from the rest of the dreaming, and then we began to make a Sandman. The first mortal we used was Garrett Sanford. He cracked up, killed himself, couldn't take the strain. So we thought, okay, next time we get someone who's dead to start with. So that's where they got Hector Hall. So we hooked the bozo, told him that he was the new Sandman, and he brought his wife along. But then you played your get out of jail free card kind of earlier than we expected, and, well, here we all are. What happens now? Morpheus tells Glob, I will clean up the mess you have created, and as for you two, I doubt that either of you will enjoy the next few thousand years very much. Morpheus banishes Brute and Glob to some place called the Darkness. Morpheus then turns his attention to Hector and Lita. Hector, scratching his head, introduces himself and his wife to Morpheus. Morpheus tells Hector, it is unseemly for the dead to walk the earth, Hector Hall. You belong with the dead, little ghost. Go to the place appointed for you. Morpheus then sends Hector to the realm of the dead. And as Hector is being sucked away, he tells his wife Lita that he loves her, and with that, Hector is gone. Lita, angry, tells Morpheus, you killed him, you monster! Morpheus explains, no, he died a long time ago. I would suggest that you count yourself lucky for having 2 extra years with him post-mortem instead of abusing me. Lita asks Morpheus what is he going to do with her. Morpheus feels that Lita's child that she has, because she's pregnant, is now part of the dreaming because the baby formed there within the dreaming because Lita was pregnant in the dreaming for so long. So he tells her that he will do nothing to her. He says she is free to go, build a new life for herself, but he almost forgot. The child that she has carried for so long in the dreams, that child is mine. Take good care of it. One day I will come for it. Lita, she can't fathom this. She says, but you can't have my baby. And Morpheus says, I have a prior engagement. I am afraid I can discuss this no further. I will see you again, Lita. Until then, farewell. Lita is distraught over this. She's not gonna give up her baby. Morpheus is gonna take her child away from her? She says, over my dead body? Later on, in all of the commotion going on in that basement, Jed, he managed to escape from that farmhouse. And he escaped from his terrible foster parents. And now he is hitchhiking, and eventually, a car pulls over and he gets in. The only thing is, though, Jed, he just got into a car with the Corinthian. Jed asks him, why are you wearing those sunglasses? It's so dark, can you see okay? And the Corinthian answers, sure, I can see, Jed. I can see everything. Issue 13, Men of Good Fortune. This issue is one of my personal favorites in this series. I love the exploration of being a person that lives forever. Last issue, Morpheus mentioned to Lita Hall that he had a prior engagement that he had to run to get to. This is the story that explains that prior engagement, and it serves as kind of an interlude in the middle of the overall Doll's House story. This issue begins in 1389 in a bar in England, and a man named Hob Gadling, or Robert Gadling, is talking to other people in the bar. Morpheus and his sister Death enter the bar as well and listen in on their conversation. Hob, he is drinking, and he says that he is never going to die, and his friends say that he's crazy. And Hob continues, the only reason people die is because everyone does it. You'll all just go along with it. It's rubbish, Death. It's stupid, and I don't want nothing to do with it. They say everyone dies, but why the hell should I? Death is rubbish. There's just so much to do, so many things to see, people to drink with, women to swive. You lot may die, and I expect you will because you're stupid. Not me, though. Morpheus and Death, listening to this, they talk. And Morpheus tells Death, it may be interesting if they let this man live and let Death escape him. Death tells her brother, very well. She agrees to go along with it. She tells Morpheus, are you going to tell him or am I? And Morpheus says he shall. Morpheus walks over to Hobgadling and asks him, did I hear you say you had no intention of dying? And Hob answers, yeah, that's right. It's a mug's game and I won't have any part of it. Morpheus tells him, then you must tell me what it's like. Let us meet here again, Robert Gadling, in this tavern in 100 years to the day. Hob's friends in the bar, they laugh at this. It's ridiculous. Hob, though, he tells Morpheus, I'll see you in 1489. Maybe at the time he wasn't expecting to actually live that long, but 100 years later in 1489, Hob Gadling is still alive. And he has come to meet Morpheus in that same bar. The bar looks a little bit different now. The fireplace is bigger, various other things have changed. Hob asks Morpheus, how did you know? Who are you? Are you a wizard, a saint, a demon? Have I unwittingly made a bargain with the devil? Morpheus says no, he is merely interested is all. He tells Hob, Death will not touch him unless he truly desires it. They talk a bit, and Morpheus asks him what he has been doing the last 100 years. Hobbs answers, soldiering mostly, a little banditry here and there. He's taken up a new trade called printing recently. Morpheus asks him if he still wants to live, and Hob replies, oh yes. So the two of them make plans to meet 100 years in the future. It is 100 years later now, in 1589. Morpheus is in a new frilly kind of attire, and he shows up at that bar. And Hob is there to greet him. Hob is rich now. He's made money in shipping. And he's been knighted. And he's even a sir now. And the queen even has slept at his mansion. He actually left town a few times and came back as his own supposed son. He's done that twice now. Hob, he even has a wife and child now. And while they are talking, William Shakespeare is in the bar. He's just written his first play, Henry VI, and everyone seems to think it's shit and terrible. Even William Shakespeare himself is feeling down on it. William, he so desperately wants to be a good writer, more than anything else in the world. He talks to this other playwright, Christopher Marlowe, who is in the bar, who wrote a play called Faustus, which is all the rage at the time. And William tells this Christopher that he only wishes he could have his gifts and that he could have the ability to give men dreams that would live on long after he is dead. Morpheus, overhearing this, goes over to talk to Shakespeare and asks him, I heard you talking. Would you write great plays? Create new dreams to spur the minds of men? Is that your will? And Shakespeare says it is. So Morpheus takes him aside and says, let's talk. So really, it was Morpheus that gave Shakespeare the ability to go from being a mediocre playwright to one of the all-time greatest. 100 years later, in 1689, Morpheus returns to that bar. The bar is looking very posh now. The seats have fabric and everything. Morpheus's outfit is even more fancy. Hobbs walks into the bar. He's a mess. He's drunk, he's poor, he's dirty. He almost gets kicked out of the place, but Morpheus tells the staff that that man is his guest. Hob, drinking, is bitter. He complains to Morpheus that his wife died in childbirth. He doesn't even remember what she looks like anymore. And his son died in a tavern brawl when he was 20. And he didn't go out much after that. The townspeople, they even tried to drown him, thinking that he was a witch because he lived there for 40 years and didn't age. Hob says he's hated every bit of the last 80 years. Morpheus asks him if he still wishes to live. Hob, despite everything, says, "Are you crazy? Death is a mug's game. I got so much to live for." 100 years later, 1789, Hobb has recovered from his low, and he's back on top again. Slavery is a thing now, and Hobb has actually become a slave trader, and it has made him very rich. Him and Morpheus talk, and Hobb asks him, "Who are you truly? What is your name?" Before Morpheus can answer, a woman named Johanna Constantine, an ancestor of John Constantine, she has learned of their ability of Morpheus and this Hobb to seemingly live forever, and how they meet here every 100 years in this bar. So she has spent the last 2 years putting together this plan, and her, along with some accomplices, hold the two of them up at knife point, and she wants to bring them to her stagecoach outside, where she will attempt to torture them or something, and get the secrets of their longevity. Morpheus, though, with his powers, quickly does away with them, making them fall asleep and giving Johanna some nightmares. As Hobb and Morpheus leave the bar this time, Morpheus tells Hobb, it's a poor thing to enslave another. I would suggest you find yourself a different line of business. 100 years later, in 1889, Hobb and Morpheus meet again. Hobb tells Morpheus, I think I know why we meet here century after century. It's not because you want to see what happens when a man don't die. You've seen what happens. I doubt I'm any wiser than I was 500 years ago. I'm older, I've been up and down and up again. I've learned from my mistakes, but I've had time to commit even more mistakes. You were right about the slave trade, though. I can never make restitution for that. I've seen people, they don't change, not in the important things, and I doubt I'll ever seek death. You've observed all of that, but you knew it from the start. No, I think you're here for something else. Morpheus, curious, asks, and what might that be? And Hobb replies, friendship. I think you're lonely. Now this, for some reason, outrages Morpheus. He says, You dare imply that I might befriend a mortal? That one of my kind might need companionship? You dare to call me lonely? And Hobb replies, Yes, I do. Tell you what, I'll be here in 100 years' time, and if you're here then too, it'll be because we're friends. No other reason, right? Right? 100 years later, in 1989, which remember is the current day in the book, Hobb is waiting in a modern-looking bar. Now, maybe it was the 70 years or so that Morpheus was locked up, but Morpheus, he's had a change of heart since he last met Hobb 100 years ago. Morpheus, he decided to show up at that bar. It was important to Morpheus, important enough for him to leave Lita Hall last issue to make sure he was here in time. Hobb, he sees Morpheus and he says, Oh, I wasn't sure you were coming. And Morpheus answers, Really? I always heard it was impolite to keep one's friends waiting. Would you like a drink? So I really like this issue because I think it is really fun to explore what it would be like to live forever and some of the struggles and some of the pros and cons of it. I also think this issue is very interesting in the way it explores Morpheus. Morpheus, like Hobb, also lives forever. And Morpheus, he used to be a very cold, distant person, but he's becoming more sentimental now, and he's actually accepted that he wants this man as his friend. Issue 14, The Collectors. This issue picks up where we left off in the story in issue 12. It is set at the hotel where Rose and Gilbert, aka Fiddler's Green, are staying. There is some sort of cereal convention that is going to be held at the hotel this upcoming weekend. What is a cereal convention? Well, it's not about cereal, that's just a cover. It's a convention for serial killers. Serial killers from all over the world come, and they talk shop and celebrate and geek out over each other, sort of like Comic-Con, except for serial killers. Everyone at the convention is actually a serial killer of some sort, and they call themselves collectors. Collectors of lives, that is. There is a dweeby-looking man with glasses named Mr. Nimrod. Mr. Nimrod is looking for the guest of honor that is supposed to be here this weekend. The guest of honor is a serial killer named the Family Man. And no, he is not referring to the Nicolas Cage 2000s movie, The Family Man, although that would be hilarious. It looks like the Family Man is a no-show for now, though, at the convention. Now, there is another man here named Nathan Diskin, although he prefers to go by his serial killer name of Funland. He is a fat man with a little wolf hat on. He looks like what you would imagine a stereotypical fat nerd character that works at a convention to look like. He is helping this Mr. Nimrod run the convention. Mr. Nimrod then goes to talk with the manager of the hotel, whom they are renting this space for the weekend for their serial convention. The manager initially promised this Mr. Nimrod that they could have the entire hotel to themselves for their little convention. But the manager explains one little problem. This Rose and this Gilbert are staying at the hotel this weekend. They were going to be leaving today and be kicked out, but they were on their way to meet this Rose's brother, and when she phoned ahead to the farm where he was staying at, the police answered the phone. Something happened to her people. As we saw in issue 12 with Jed in the basement and Morpheus and the whole Sandman battle with Hector Hall and Brute and Glob and all that nonsense. Well, in the aftermath of that, the police arrived at the farmhouse, and when Rose phoned the farmhouse, the police picked up and they requested that Rose stay where she is at the hotel, in case they need to talk to her. The sheriff even spoke to the manager of the hotel personally. The manager tried to explain to the sheriff all about the convention this weekend. Of course, he didn't tell the sheriff it was a serial killer convention, but he was trying to say that Rose wasn't allowed to stay here during it. But the sheriff didn't care. He says that Rose has to stay there for now in case they need her. The manager didn't want to cause any trouble with the law, so he is abiding by that. Mr. Nimrod, hearing this, he isn't happy about having outsiders here at their convention, but he says as long as they ensure that she stays out of the convention areas, should be okay. Mr. Nimrod doesn't want any of the convention guests, killing anyone. Rose, she's up in her hotel room right now. She's reflecting that it's been 7 years since she's seen her brother. Last time she saw him, she was like 14 and he was 5. She can't believe that when she phoned ahead to the farmhouse to let them know that she was coming, that the police picked up. Rose is confiding with Fiddler's Green about the situation, and he is comforting her. Mr. Nimrod and Funland are talking. Funland says that 80 people have registered so far. No sign of the Family Man, though. The Family Man does not show up, but the Corinthian does. The Corinthian, he goes over to Funland and Mr. Nimrod and tells them his name and that he should be on the list for the weekend. Funland starts geeking out over the Corinthian. He says, oh wow, Mr. Nimrod said you'd be coming, but wow, I thought you'd be older. Here's your stuff, Mr. Corinthian. Wear your badge at all times. You won't be permitted into the convention area without it. We're all big fans of yours. Do you think I can have your autograph? Mr. Nimrod asked the Corinthian, because he is such a legend in their community of collectors, if he would like to be their guest of honor this weekend. The previous guest of honor, the Family Man, is a no-show. Corinthian says he'll do it. Later on, Mr. Nimrod goes out in front of the other collectors to talk. He is nervous. He thinks to himself, you have a shack in Vermont that no one knows about with 4 full chest freezers of bodies. You shouldn't be nervous. Mr. Nimrod, he tells the crowd a joke and he gets some polite laughter. He then lays down the ground rules for the weekend. There will be no civilian names used. They should always use their aliases. Also, no shitting where we eat. Don't kill anyone at the hotel. Nobody does any collecting until they are at least 200 miles away from here. Mr. Nimrod then introduces the Corinthian, who is the new guest of honor. Nimrod says, I'd like to present our new guest of honor, a legend in his own lifetime, an inspiration to us all. I know, to me personally, one of the first and one of the best. They've called him the Eye Guy and the Dark Angel, and the Shades, and maybe 1,000 other names, but we've always known it was one man. Gentlemen, ladies, our guest of honor, the Corinthian. The Corinthian, he comes out and he waves to the crowd. Later on at the convention, we see a serial killer doctor who goes by the name Flay by Night. He is looking at the film program that will be airing during the convention, and another man starts talking to him. That man claims that he is the serial killer known as the Boogeyman. At first, Flay by Night has no reason to doubt the man is the Boogeyman, but then this supposed Boogeyman starts being all fanboyish to Flay by Night and asks for his autograph, and Flay by Night gets offended and leaves. Flay by Night suspects that this Boogeyman is a fake, and not the real Boogeyman, but just an imposter. Flay by Night, he walks through the convention, and we see all these other collectors. There's Dog Soup, the Choir Boy, Hello Little Girl, Carry On, etc. Rose and Fiddler's Green, they are in an elevator at the hotel, and the Corinthian and Flay by Night are walking over to them. Flay by Night tells the Corinthian that he suspects the guy claiming to be the Boogeyman is a fake. Corinthian agrees, he says, "The Boogeyman is dead, Doctor. He drowned in Louisiana 3 years ago." Flay by Night asks, "How do you know?" And Corinthian answers, "I know." If you read between the lines here, you can gather that Corinthian killed the real Boogeyman 3 years ago. The two of them then decide that they should do something about this. Flay by Night and Corinthian join Rose and Fiddler's Green in the elevator, and they ride down with them. Fiddler's Green starts looking incredibly nervous when he sees the Corinthian. He definitely recognizes him. Fiddler's Green knows that the Corinthian is one of Morpheus's nightmares. Fiddler's Green takes off his hat and covers his face to hide himself from the Corinthian. The Corinthian did not notice Fiddler's Green. After the elevator ride ends, Fiddler's Green, now incredibly nervous and agitated, gives Rose a warning. He tells her, "I've written a name on this paper. Read it to yourself and do not say it out loud. If things get bad, call the name, Rose Walker. Call him." The name that he wrote on the paper was Morpheus's name. Fiddler's Green then walks away and he mumbles to himself, "And may God have mercy on us all." Later on at the convention, Corinthian, Flay by Night, and Mr. Nimrod retrieve the man claiming to be this Boogeyman serial killer. They bring him somewhere secluded, and they discover that he is definitely not the Boogeyman. He is actually just a man named Phil Sitz. Phil is the writer of a serial killer appreciation fan magazine called Chased. He isn't one of them, he's just a fan, he's never even killed anyone. Phil Sitz is trying to explain, "No, I'm one of you, I understand it. You know, females are insects created for male pleasure, strength, energy, lust, willingness to sacrifice another's life for one's own gratification. I understand it. That's why I had to get here to see you all, to learn." They knock him over the head and they drive him somewhere secluded. We learn that the Corinthian has Jed Walker in the trunk of his car. He's saving Jed for himself for later. So they had Phil in the backseat of the car. They drove somewhere and they string up Phil Sitz to a tree, and they each take turns torturing him before eventually killing him. Back at the convention, we see Funland, and he is talking to another collector. And Funland is talking about how he goes to amusement parks and how great it is because it's easy to find lost kids and have their way with them. By the way, some interesting behind the scenes info. Initially, Funland had a mouse hat, like how Mickey Mouse wears at Disneyland. Well, DC, they were scared of Disney, so they changed it last minute to a wolf kind of hat. Funland, he happens to see Rose walking by and he stops her from entering the convention. He knows that she is not a convention guest, but as he waves her away, he is really attracted to her, especially her youth. And Funland starts saying creepy shit once she leaves about how that was a beautiful little girl and she looks so young. In the morning, Rose knocks on Fiddler's Green's hotel room, but he has disappeared. He left. But he left a note on his bed for Rose, and the note reads, "If things get bad, call the name." The convention is still going on downstairs. There's a 10:30 a.m. panel discussion on We Are What We Are, a 12:30 panel discussion on women in serial killing, and a 3:30 panel discussion on There Is No Sanity Clause. So Neil Gaiman really having some fun parodying comic book conventions, but making it about serial killers. Funland, he can't contain himself anymore. At some point, he sneaks away from the festivities downstairs, and he goes up and finds Rose's room, and he breaks into it. Funland knows it's against the rules to attack anyone on hotel premises. After all, they were told by Mr. Nimrod, don't shit where you eat, but he doesn't care anymore. He barges down the door and grabs Rose. Funland starts strangling and assaulting her. Rose, she grabs the note, though, that Fiddler's Green left for her and remembers that he told her if things get bad to call the name. Well, the name is Morpheus. Rose, not sure if it will do anything, decides to try it, and she says, Morpheus. And with that, Morpheus appears instantly. He sees Funland assaulting Rose, and Morpheus immediately calls him by his real name. He says, "Let go of her, Nathan Diskin." And Nathan freaks out. How does this guy know his name? And he lets Rose go. And Nathan tells Morpheus, "You can't have her, she's mine. We're playing, she's mine." Morpheus puts Funland to sleep, zonks him out. Morpheus then tells Rose to heal and breathe, and then leave the building. Morpheus says he has some other business to attend to for now. Morpheus heads downstairs to the convention, and the Corinthian is giving his speech to all the other collectors. Corinthian is the guest of honor, after all. Corinthian says to them, "You know, I don't usually speak in public, but the opportunity of talking to all of you is just too good to pass up, because you are special people, very special people. We are the American dreamers, driving down the holy road to true knowledge that's paved with blood and gold, and across the length and breadth of this fair country, we are killing people. We don't do it to make a living. We don't do it for revenge. We don't kill people anonymously, poisoning their aspirin, putting shards of glass in baby food. We don't drive cars onto crowded sidewalks. We don't carry guns into burger joints and blast away until a SWAT team spatters our brains all over our French fries. We do not murder for profit. We do not murder for governments or for hire. We kill to kill. We are entrepreneurs in an expanding field." Then all of a sudden, he freezes because he spots Morpheus sitting there in the audience. Morpheus, watching from the crowd, says loudly, "You disappoint me, Corinthian. You were my masterpiece, or so I thought." Corinthian removes his sunglasses and his teeth eyeballs, speaking, say, "So what now? Do you expect me to submit quietly? Return to the dreaming to scar their sleeping minds, never again to know the delights of a sweet boy's eye as it pops between my teeth? Is that it?" Corinthian is prepared to fight Morpheus, but Morpheus says he will not fight. It is his fault. He made the Corinthian poorly, so now he will uncreate him. Morpheus, he easily uncreates the Corinthian, and Corinthian dissolves into a pile of dust, but his skull still remains. Morpheus then turns his attention to the serial killer collectors in attendance in the audience, and he tells them, "And you that call yourselves collectors, until now you have all sustained fantasies in which you are the maltreated heroes of your own stories, comforting daydreams in which ultimately you are shown to be in the right. Well, no more. For all of you, the dream is over. I have taken it away. For this is my judgment on you, that you shall know at all times and forever exactly what you are, and you shall know just how little that means. Now leave." So I guess Morpheus has done something so that all these serial killers in their minds will no longer want to kill anymore, and they will realize how pathetic they are and their past actions have been. Outside of the building in the parking lot, Rose is standing there. Fiddler's Green walks over to her and is carrying Jed. He explains that he found Jed locked in the boot of a car and he heard him sobbing. Jed is alive, but they need to get him to a hospital. Fiddler's Green asks Rose, "You called him, didn't you?" referring to Morpheus. "I suppose we will both have to face the consequences of that." And with that, the serial convention ends, and all the collectors leave to go home. Issue 15, Into the Night. Jed is in the hospital out cold. Rose was forced to leave him there for now and come back home. At home, all the other roommates of hers in the house are giving their condolences and best wishes for her brother's recovery. When Rose goes to bed that night, her dream vortex powers start kicking in, and Rose, unaware of her powers, can't control it. She starts sensing the dreams of all the others in the house. Ken dreams of money, sex, and power, and his wife Barbie dreams a vivid dream of a magical land where she rides a weird beast. Chantel dreams of reflecting on herself, and her partner Zelda dreams remembering her childhood. Hal, the crossdresser, dreams of Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe and his old boyfriend Robert. Rose, she dreams and senses all of them, and she starts tearing down the barriers of their dreams, causing all of their dreams to begin crashing together. Eventually, Morpheus is forced to step in. He enters into Rose's dream and tells her enough. He tells her that she has caused a great deal of damage. Nothing he cannot repair at this stage, but it has come time for the two of them to talk. Meanwhile, over in England, Unity Kincaid is tossing and turning in her bed. She tells her daughter Miranda that she thinks Rose should have the dollhouse she has here. Then Unity falls asleep. Over at the hospital, Fiddler's Green is watching over Jed, and Matthew the Raven visits him. Matthew tells Fiddler's Green that Rose is a dream vortex. Fiddler's Green is very surprised to hear this. If Rose is a dream vortex, then that means Morpheus is going to have to kill her. Issue 16, Lost Hearts. Morpheus and Rose are talking in the dreaming. Morpheus tells Rose that she is a dream vortex and he is going to have to kill her. Rose can't believe it. Morpheus saved her from that creep at the convention and now he's gonna kill her? Fiddler's Green and Matthew are making their way through the dreaming, trying to get to Rose and Morpheus. Morpheus explains to Rose that once in every era there was a dream vortex, a mortal who briefly becomes the center of the dreaming. The vortex destroys the barriers between dreaming minds, destroys the ordered chaos of the dreaming, until all the dreamers in the world are caught up in one huge dream, and the vortex collapses in upon itself. It takes the minds of the dreamers with it, and damages the dreaming beyond repair, and it leaves nothing but darkness. One of Morpheus's functions as Dream Lord is to prevent this from occurring ever again. It happened once before. A world was lost, eons ago, half a universe away. Morpheus says he failed in his duty, and a whole world perished, and he will not allow it to happen again, so he has to kill her. Rose asks Morpheus, but if you're the lord of this place, can't you just magic whatever this is out of me? Morpheus says he can't. At that moment, Fiddler's Green and Matthew the Raven arrive. Rose runs over to Fiddler's Green and hugs him because they're friends. Morpheus, seeing Fiddler's Green, asks him, "Why did you leave? I relied on you, I trusted you, you were so steady. You were the heart of the dreaming." And Fiddler's Green answers, "I left because I was curious, and because I was tired. Life as a human contains substance I never dreamed of in the dreaming, Lord. The little victories and the tiny defeats. I had my reasons to leave. But that is of no importance. This girl, Rose Walker, I offer my life for hers." Morpheus tells him that that is not an option, unfortunately. The girl must die so that the dreaming may survive. Morpheus says, "I am sorry." Fiddler's Green and Rose, they say their tearful goodbyes to one another. Fiddler's Green then takes up his position once again in the dreaming as this beautiful, meadowy green landscape. Morpheus then tells Rose that he is sorry once more, and he's going to have to kill her. But then Morpheus is interrupted by a very young-looking Unity Kincaid in the dreaming. Unity Kincaid was asleep, and she has traveled over here in the dreaming, and she seems to know what is going on. Unity Kincaid says that Rose is not going to die tonight. I am. Rose looks around and comments how beautiful it is here, referring to Fiddler's Green and the green meadowy area they are in. Morpheus tells Unity that Rose is a vortex and she is the one that must die. Unity tells Morpheus that perhaps she herself should have been the vortex. If Morpheus had not been imprisoned away from the dreaming, she probably would have been one herself. Morpheus doesn't understand. Unity turns to Rose and says to her, "Granddaughter, come here. Rose, I once gave you a ring. I want you to reach inside yourself and give me whatever it is that makes you the vortex. Give me your heart." And Rose, confused, asks, "My heart?" And Unity continues, "Rose, I'm dying. We don't have much time. You're dreaming. Anything's possible. Just do it." So Rose, she reaches into her chest and she gives her grandmother her heart in the dreaming. Unity then states, "I am the vortex now, Dream King, as I should have been many years ago. I am the vortex." Unity then seems to absorb the vortex and become it. Then she dies in the real world. She passes away. She was 90 years old, after all. And in the dreaming Unity, she falls down. Morpheus, he recognizes that Unity Kincaid has died in the waking world, and he helps her up. Rose doesn't fully understand what is happening. She asks, "I don't understand this, I'm sorry. Are you still gonna kill me?" And Morpheus answers, "There is no need, Rose Walker. There is much here that I do not understand, but the vortex has gone. Leave this place, child. I will bring your brother back from the shores of Dream. He will return to consciousness in the morning. View it as a gift from me to you, Rose. Your family has suffered enough. Goodbye, Rose Walker." And with that, Rose, she snaps out of it and wakes up. 6 months later, with Unity Kincaid now dead, Miranda, Rose, and Jed inherited all of her money and are now really rich themselves, and they now live in a big house outside Seattle and are happy. Happy enough for now, anyway. And Rose, she explains away all the weird things that happened to her as just a dream. Just a dream. It was all just a dream. Morpheus goes to visit his sister brother Desire in her realm. Morpheus tells Desire that Unity Kincaid should have been the dream vortex of this era, and she wasn't the vortex. It was transferred along her genetic line to her daughter Rose Walker. This is unprecedented. Someone has been meddling in my affairs, and this is your stink on it. So Morpheus, he figured out that Desire was the one that raped Unity Kincaid all those years ago. Desire did this because Morpheus would be forced to kill the Dream Vortex. It is his responsibility, but the Endless are also forbidden to kill one another. So if Morpheus were to kill Rose Walker, who is actually the daughter of Desire and is of Desire's blood, Morpheus would be breaking that rule. And if he did that, some sort of unexplained bad thing would happen to Morpheus. Morpheus states, "What did you truly intend, Desire? Was I to take the life of one of our own blood? With all that that would entail? Or was it more devious than that?" Desire answers, "Doesn't matter, it didn't work anyway." Morpheus chastises his sister brother and threatens her. He says, "Desire, if you were not of my kin..." But Desire says, "But I am." Morpheus continues, "Yes, you are. Desire, listen to me carefully. Remember this. We of the Endless are the servants of the living. We are not their masters. We exist because they know deep in their hearts that we exist. When the last living thing has left this universe, then our task will be done, and we do not manipulate them. If anything, they manipulate us. We are their toys, their dolls, if you will, and you, in despair, and even poor Delirium should remember that. Desire says he doesn't understand. And Morpheus continues, I am afraid that you don't. Very well. I shall tell you something that you will understand, sister brother. Mess with me or mine again, and I will forget that you are family, Desire. Do you believe yourself strong enough to stand against me, against death, and against destiny? Remember that, sibling, the next time you feel inspired to interfere in my affairs. Just remember. Morpheus then leaves, and Desire, she thinks about it, but then she brushes it aside and smiles, for Desire is a creature of the moment. And that is the end of Volume 2. Alright, that was Volume 2, The Doll's House. I'm going to break down my thoughts on the various stories we explored within this volume. So firstly, the African folktale issue I thought was very creative. That was something I've never seen before in a comic book, and it was pretty cool, although some of the plot elements were a little bit unrealistic and out there and trippy, so I didn't love aspects of it, but points for the creativity, pretty cool stuff. The overall Rose Walker story in this volume I thought was pretty satisfying in the end and how everything wrapped up with her. So that was good. I'll touch more on her in a bit, though. Jed Walker, aspects of his storyline I liked. How he had this whole dream dimension in his head by this brute and glob. Although aspects of that were a little bit high concept and overly complicated, and using these obscure DC characters and trying to integrate the Sandman from the 1970s within his mind, and it gets a little bit much there. So aspects of it I didn't love, but on the whole, it was pretty fun, and there were some funny moments in there. How Morpheus just dismissing this Hector Hall and calling him this little ghost was pretty amusing. I really loved the Hob Gadling story. I've always been interested in the concept of a guy that lives forever and what his life would be like, so that was great stuff. The serial killer convention issue was immense fun. What a amazing concept for a horror book, to have a serial killer convention with all of these serial killers there, but sort of parodying comic book conventions. Really fun, a little bit horrifying. And the Corinthian, what a great villain. One of the scariest looking villains I've ever seen. A guy that has mouths where his eyes should be and the teeth. It looks horrifying, and he wears the sunglasses. Great concept for a villain character, so I was immensely satisfied with that particular issue. Great, great stuff. Now, some of the stuff with Rose being this dream vortex and Unity Kincaid going into the dreaming and asking her granddaughter to give her her heart was definitely a little bit high concept. Sometimes the high concept stuff in Sandman bothers me a little bit, and I have a hard time buying into all of it, but still very interesting. So on the whole, I thought this volume was really good stuff. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I will be back in the future with Volume 3.